Hi, everyone, and welcome back to season 3 of Commerce Meets Law, a podcast we talk about various commercial topics and how they interact with the legal profession. Today's episode is with someone who actually needs no introduction because it is none other than Henry Nelson Case. For the absolutely small minority of people who haven't yet come across Henry, he is a commercial lawyer at 5 years PQE, currently working at Thrive Law, alongside being an incredible content creator. Through his content, Henry strives to promote the importance of mental health and challenge toxic corporate behaviors in the workplace. Henry is also the co-founder of a creator community called the Creator Space, which is all about creating sort of an environment to help creators created by fellow creators. So I think that this concept is so interesting because I can see how Henry has not just changed the content landscape in terms of talking about the legal profession and the challenges that lawyers face, but also then launched a project which helps these creators by people who understand what that's all about. So I think it's just absolutely brilliant. And with his personal experience in the legal profession and a passion for mental health awareness, Henry aims to foster a community of people that can openly talk about their experiences and support each other, which he certainly has. In this episode, we discuss firstly why Henry entered the legal profession and when he, at that point, sort of what he envisaged his career to look like whilst at university, his initial success story on social media and how that brought unexpected pivots into his professional life, how he currently balances being a lawyer and content creator all at the same time, and whether he recommends fellow lawyers to also have a strong social media presence, and finally, Henry's future goals from both a professional and a personal perspective. This episode, I think, is the perfect blend of knowledge, of advice, of humor. Henry's just really funny, but just does it in a really easy manner. And I think it's brilliant. I really, really enjoyed it, which truly also encapsulates the reason behind Henry's success on social media. Just a quick request before we get into the conversation. I'd really appreciate if you could kindly give the podcast a rating and a follow on Spotify or on Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to it, as it really helps Commerce Meets Law reach more listeners. Without further ado, I really, really hope you enjoyed this episode, and I'll see you right at the end. Hi, Henry, and welcome to Commerce Meets Law. I wanted to have this conversation for such a long time, having seen all of your content and all that you talk about. So I'm super excited to have our conversation today. Before we start, we always have an icebreaker on the podcast, which is, in your opinion, what is your superpower?
Ooh, strong start, bloody hell. No, I think I was speaking to somebody yesterday actually, and they were saying that um, one of my strengths is that I'm very good at like connecting with people and like bringing people together and kind of being like the glue almost. So I think something I'm very good at is just like connecting with people. Um, I think that's something I enjoy and probably something I don't give myself enough credit for.
I think it comes through in all your content and also the conversation we were having just before we got started. So I can see that shine through already. And before we talk a little bit about all that you do now as a lawyer and a content creator, I want to take a couple of steps back. So can you tell us a bit about when you first developed an interest in law and when you kind of first thought, this could be a path for me?
Yeah, for sure. I can remember it quite vividly in the sense of how I entered into or thought, I'm going to do law, is I was selecting my A-level options. And I think I had one more block to, that you just have to choose
Yeah.
which one you're going to do and all of that. I had one last one to choose. And I recall my dad saying, why don't you give law a go? And I thought, do you know what? I will because my centre offered it and not a lot of spaces did offer a law A level. So I
Yeah.
thought, what the heck? Let's do it. I was doing one of the English language options, so I thought that would complement quite nicely. I did it and I really enjoyed it. And I think at the end of my law A level, I think I managed to achieve like full marks in basically all four of the exams. So I thought, do you know what? I think I think I might be okay at this. I'm going to give that a go. And I just done, it was around the time I was applying for uni as well. So I think I sat the LNAT test, the law admissions test, or whatever it's been
Hmm.
rebranded to. Did okay on that, and then I had my offers come through, um, and I thought I'm just going to do law, and then I did my undergraduate, and that's when I learned that like a lawyer is an umbrella term for solicitor and barrister, and then that's when the path my to be fair, my career pathway into becoming a lawyer is very traditional, very straightforward. I just went through every tick box thing as it came up. I think the only like not completely like on the pathway was that I didn't get my training contract whilst at university.
Hmm.
I finished my undergraduate and I got a job as a paralegal. I was banking and finance paralegal at OC, which I absolutely loved. It was one of my favorite roles, the finance team. So I was the paralegal for Bristol, Reading, and London, and the team across the offices were insane. And I think it must have been within the first 2, 3 months of that role that I got my training contract offer, and I was doing my LPC at the same time, part time on the weekends. And that role came to a conclusion basically when my LPC finished and my training contract started. No, that's a lie. I went to America for a month, came back, and I started my training contract, qualified, lawyer, bish bash bosh.
Yeah, and I think that again, that sort of journey of becoming a paralegal and then getting your training contract is becoming increasingly popular as well, and is also an increasingly accepted route, I think, into especially the commercial legal profession. Can you tell us a bit about what you sort of gained from being a paralegal, some of the skills that you picked up, and whether you'd recommend it to anyone, especially if maybe they're not sure yet if they want to actually get training contracts and go down that path?
Yeah, I completely agree that this is as particularly with the SQE coming into effect and the qualifying work
Mm,
experience, the paralegal route is such a great way to get experience within a law firm. Similar with like solicitor apprenticeships as well. I think that's another incredible route into the profession. But in terms of the skills that being a paralegal gave me was I hadn't ever worked in an office before. I could use a printer, but that was in the uni library. Um, I had very limited skills in terms of email communication, save for emailing like professors and tutors and stuff, or part-time job applications. Like other than that, I like whilst at uni, I wasn't well versed in email etiquette or office etiquette. So that
mm,
definitely teed me up quite well just to kind of learn the nuances of office life and how things happen and what we say. Um, that helped. Time management. That was such a good skill, particularly if you throw the LPC into that as well. In managing time for that, learning how to prioritize, managing like upwards. If you've got a partner saying, "Hi, can you put this completion Bible together?" and you've got another partner saying this, learning to say, "Well,
mm,
actually, which one takes priority?" and just having that general confidence within the
yeah.
office space. So when it came to starting my training contract, I had a base level of knowledge of how to interact, what to say, how to sign off an email, um, and all of those basic sort of office soft skills that you don't necessarily get taught.
Absolutely. And in terms of your training contract, then, can you tell us a bit about sort of the seats you did and what you ended up qualifying into?
Yeah, sure. So I started in litigation,
Hmm.
um, general commercial litigation, and I did the odd bit of property litigation, but that was, I think, just because a partner needed a trainee to do something. And I think they liked me, so I was like, yeah, sound, I'll do it. But it was primarily commercial focused, which was great. So it was involved in like all the classic trainee tasks. Then I did banking and finance, which I absolutely loved. And I also really loved it because I did it as my paralegal role. So I knew
Yeah,
all the basics and I was kind of operating at trainee level at OC. Um, so stepping into that role, it was almost like I was a NQ in that team.
yeah.
So the two partners I worked with could just like throw stuff at me and I would have like the best time. So much so I was so close to qualifying into banking and finance. I just think I had a conversation. Well, they took me for a pub lunch actually, and they knew that I liked it. I knew that they knew I liked it. I knew I liked it, but I just think I was just thinking long-term career, and what I
Yeah.
wanted to do. I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I also knew I wanted to do something more techy. And then I did rogue seat, sorry, in family. Um, and I
Mm.
remember when I was given the seat, and it was just a small like team, like
Yeah.
in the wider firm. They were like, "We do family. We're going to put this boy in family." And I remember going over. I marched my way over to the one of the corporate partners that was in the office that I was in, and I said, "What the heck is this? I don't want to do this. I want to do a corporate seat."
Yeah.
And I will admit I perhaps threw my toys out of the pram. And I think part of the reason that maybe this seat was offered to me was to perhaps, I don't know, just push me outside of my comfort zone and
Yeah.
challenge me in a way that perhaps I hadn't from litigation and banking. And they said, try it for 3 months. If you don't like it, we'll just give you a split seat. We don't do that so often, but if you really don't like it, we can make something work. I
Hmm.
did that family seat and I bloody loved it. I loved everything. I did the whole 6 months. I wanted to stay. I loved it so much. And just a thing I would say to future trainees is if you get a seat that you don't want to do or you do not like or you don't think you'll like, just do it
Yeah.
anyway because you will gain so many skills from it. You'll challenge yourself, you'll push yourself outside of your comfort zone. And honestly, the head of the family team, the partner there, I still meet up with her. We still get lunch. We still get coffee. We still chat. She's one of my biggest sort of career supporters, and I that wouldn't have happened if I didn't stick with it. So I'm so glad that I did. And then finally, I did a commercial seat, which is what I ended up qualifying into.
That's super interesting. And like you say, we've had so many people come on this podcast and say, oh, I thought I'd become, I'd go into litigation, but then actually I did an M&A seat and I loved that, or vice versa. And so many different kind of ideas of what they thought they would qualify into being put into a seat that they thought, oh gosh, like don't want to do this, and actually loving it. So I think it's so key to have that open mind and really be like, well, even if I don't, let's take it as a challenge, and at least you'll learn something out of it. And I love that. I love that story. And speaking of your sort of long-term career and what you sort of qualified into, I guess if I want to sort of fast forward a little bit and talk about the transition from leaving OC and kind of transitioning from having a full-time job, can you tell us a bit about how that decision came to be and sort of why you decided to end up in that place?
So yeah, when I left my full time. So I'm 5 years qualified. So maybe six actually. I qualified in 2019. That's six, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, uh, is that I was in private practice, and I left Bevan Britain, so I practiced in end of 2020 and start of 2021. I went in-house as a in-house lawyer, which when I was at uni, I didn't even realize that was a thing. I thought you
Mm,
were either a lawyer at a law firm, a solicitor at a law firm, or you're a barrister in chambers. So it's great that there are so many cool new career like avenues now. And then I went in-house, which was great. I really enjoyed it. But during my in-house time is when I started making content on the internet, obviously. And it took off in a way that I didn't even know was a thing that like this could be your job. And my I get asked often if my goal was to be like famous or like well known and stuff. And honestly, I get if you bump into me in the street, I get so anxious, so embarrassed very easily. So that was never my goal. It was more just I like making people laugh. I like connecting with people. And I posted a video on TikTok on a whim, like when I downloaded the app in late summer 2021, and it got some attention and traction. I thought, oh, hmm, I'll do this again. And then I just
mm,
kept doing it, and I got more people reach out and say, mate, like, can relate to this, or do like this is how I feel. So then that encouraged me to start sharing more about my own experiences, the good and the bad of the legal profession. And then a couple of months in, I had like LinkedIn reach out to say, hey, like, we want to make some content with you. We will pay you. I thought, I beg your pardon. What do you mean? Why would you do that? And then I'd shifted from, oh, bloody hell, this was just a fun hobby to this can be operated as a business.
Yeah.
That's when I started like looking at other creators who I'm quite good friends with a lot of US creators, and I was speaking with them, and they're like, yeah, you have like agents, management teams, all of this stuff. There was a whole world that I didn't know was a thing.
Mm.
And I think until you're in that space, you don't really know what goes on. You just think someone posts like a 60-second video and cracks on with their day. But then it got to a point that I was in-house, I was doing this, I was being invited to events like PR, all of this stuff. So I was using my own like annual leave, and I run out pretty quickly. So then I was like having conversations around like, should I just like take some unpaid leave? Should I do this? Um, and my personal life was taking quite a hit because I was operating basically two full-time jobs. And oh, this isn't sustainable. My then girlfriend and me broke up because I wasn't around. And I probably wasn't this was pre-therapy as well, probably wasn't the best person to
Mm.
be around because I was chronically on my phone. I had work deadlines. I had other, like my own business work deadlines, um, calls with like the US in the evening. So I had to do that, or I had to shoot content in the evening. And I was miserable. If I'm being completely honest, I wasn't happy.
Yeah.
Uh, Whilst it may have looked it like I'm at these events, I'm doing all this stuff, I've got a job. I think fundamentally I was not in the best space. So it was pretty much the week that I turned 30, I quit that job. I broke up with then girlfriend. Um, I had no clue what I was doing with my life, and I just went to Thailand, which is a real privileged thing to be able to do. But I just went away for a bit. My mate was off
Yeah.
traveling and said, "Just come with me." So 2 weeks before they went, I was like, "What the heck?" Got a ticket, and then whilst I was out there, funnily enough, I had the TEDx team reach out and were like, "Mate, do you want to do a TED talk?" To which I think I was drunk at some party in like the south of Thailand. And I was like, this is a joke, obviously, lol, sure, why the hell not? Didn't think anything would happen. Got back to the UK and they're like, it was in Bulgaria. So they're like, your flights to Bulgaria have been booked. We need your script. The TED team say this, this, and this. I was like,
Wow.
oh, damn, this is a real thing. Um, but I also didn't want to sort of completely be away from the law. So I joined Pince and Masons for just over a year as a consultant solicitor, but I was an in-house lawyer for the law firm. So I dealt with all of their like internal contracts, contracts with third parties. And the team who I worked with in the London office, they're just behind Liverpool Street Station, were one of the most supportive and nice teams that I've ever worked with. Shout out to Miles and Fiona. They were so like encouraging of not only me as a lawyer within the team, but also me and all the other stuff that I do, and they would
Yeah.
actively involve me in conversations around what the firm could be doing to support junior talent, talent attraction and retention. And I think for me, one of my biggest fears, I don't know if you feel similar, sort of operating the podcast as well, is that I joined Pince and Masons and they knew this is going to sound wanky, but it's not intended to sound like this, but they knew who I was from social media. Um, and I remember going into the office first time, and Alice, who was around, we're the same sort of level PQE. One of the first things she said to me, it made me laugh so much. She's like, "So I googled your name, and in a TED talk." I was like, "Shit, let's just have the conversation now." And I think from that, my biggest fear was that I wouldn't be taken seriously as a lawyer, or they would just think this guy's here just to like
Yeah.
roll around, film some content, make fun of us all, bish bash bosh,
Mm.
and they wouldn't think that actually I'm a good lawyer, which I was like, well, this kind of goes against the brand because I know that I am a decent lawyer. I'm good at what I do, but I don't want them to think that I'm just here just for something to do as a hobby. And then when I left that team, there couldn't been be that thought that I had couldn't have been so far from the truth because they're like, mate, we loved working with you. I was like, I loved working with you guys. And I think that was such a nice reaffirming experience to know that, oh, actually, despite the shift in direction, I'm still good at what I've trained to do. I work really hard to do. I still keep up with everything.
Mm.
So I left that. Then I had some time out. And Jodie Hill, who is the managing partner of Thrive, she and I have become good friends through our mutual friend, Rob Hanna. If you don't know him, I can intro you. He's a lovely chap.
He's
Um,
been on the pod as well. Yeah, Rob is
I mean,
actually amazing.
yeah, I don't. Why am I here? That guy's that guy's absolute top chap.
Yeah,
There, he will do anything to like help and support you, and he's one of those people that have been so successful because, but hasn't been like mean or like horrible. It's
yeah.
just nice, and I feel like that is such an underrated quality. It's just being,
Mm.
and I really value that. But yeah, so Jodie and I got put in touch, and she was like, "Oh, we're looking for somebody to do some commercial work to support their clients." I was like, "Well, I honestly I can't work a full-time law job because I run the business and everything else.
Yeah.
Realistically, it'd be unfair on me and you and your clients to commit to that because I can't do it." So I basically just worked there on a part-time basis, which if you'd asked me, I'll ask you this question in like 5, 6 years' time to see where you end up in your career. But if you would have asked me when I was starting out, will I be working as a lawyer part-time? I would have said, what the heck? You
Yeah.
can't do that. And I get to do that. And it's an incredible thing that I've worked really hard to kind of be able to do
I
that.
mean, it's just such an incredible journey, and like you said, I remember watching that TED talk, and I googled you as well, so I remember that TED talk was the first thing that came up, and just seeing someone there represent the legal profession talking about not just the good parts, but actually what the flaws are of the profession, what needs to change, particularly for junior talent, and I think that really comes across in your content as well, regardless of, I think what is really clever about it is that it's done in a funny way, but it still gets that key message across. So can you tell us a little bit about, from that content perspective, what your key message really is through your content and sort of why you still carry on doing that today?
Yeah, I think the reason that I carry on doing it is because honestly, I love it like so, so much. I don't
Yeah.
think I've ever loved doing something in like a professional capacity as much as I do this. And
Mm,
I fundamentally get so much joy and happiness through doing it. And as much as other people will be like, mate, I relate to this, like needed to see this today, like it helps me just as much. And
yeah.
the reason that I guess I have the level of sort of confidence that like comfort in myself, the fact that now I can look at like law work and think it's not the end of the world if something goes wrong. I can see the bigger picture is because of this and the community um,
Mm,
that we've built. And I think in terms of the key message, I would say that I just want to promote a safer and happier, um, well-being focused um, sort of agenda within the legal profession. And one of the ways that I like to sort of challenge those sort of toxic corporate behaviors is I like to use humor. It's how I deal with a lot of things. It's how I like making people laugh. I always say that if I wasn't a lawyer, one of the jobs I would have liked to have done is become a comedian.
yeah.
Whether or not that would have materialized, who knows? But it's something I'd always would have liked to have done. And this kind of allows me to do that in some capacity, um,
Mm,
which I like doing. And of course, things will change over time in terms of the content that I do, the way that I sort of process things and put stuff out there. Um, but oh, just on the, you mentioned you watched the TED Talk. Interestingly, that was the very first, like outside of uni, like assessments, first public speaking thing I'd ever done because I'm not a public
wow.
speaker.
Yeah.
Um, but just from that to like, I wasn't the most confident person like articulating what I think or like speaking in front of people.
Yeah.
The way this job content has put me in rooms that I didn't think I would ever be in, or like people like me shouldn't be in, like stay in your lane, lawyer boy. Um, it's been amazing to see, and to see the like next generation of content creators who are in the legal space, like coming up, putting stuff out there, is so like heartwarming and nice to see, because I'm
Yeah.
not going to be doing this forever. There will be somebody younger that comes and steps in, um, and does this in however many years' time whilst I'm off. I don't know, hopefully living in Thailand or something. Who knows? Um, but to know that we've been part of like almost the beginning of this space, and we've enabled and encouraged and made people feel comfortable and confident enough to also want to share their tips, to share their journeys, to like this podcast, bring people in who have experience or want to learn how people have got to where they are, to be inspired, educated. I think that's such an incredible thing.
Definitely. And I think that, what you spoke about there of putting yourselves in rooms that you don't think you could be in, and that idea that just because you've chosen one path that you can't possibly pivot and go elsewhere, I think that's definitely a mold that the next generation is breaking. And the idea of pivoting careers and having side hustles or doing things part time is becoming so much more accepted, which I think is amazing. I think that one of the messages that I always get from your content is that idea of, promoting mental health in the workplace, prioritizing your well-being, which is so key in the legal profession, particularly at the start. And I guess one view is that, when you sort of enter into profession, you could be willing to put in n number of hours, you'd be willing to sacrifice other things because that's what you're there for. You're there to learn. And I guess that's a view that's been there, particularly within law, for a very long time. What would be your response to that view in terms of where that actually helps with your career growth?
I think if you would have asked me this when I started out in my career, I would always be there like, before I left, can I help anybody with anything before I go? Like, honestly, happy to work all
Mm,
the hours. Um, but I think what is nice to see, and I think if I see it, I think that person's confident, they're self-aware, they're comfortable in themselves, is healthy boundaries, because there is a time and a place for when we need to kind of really get stuck in and get stuff done. And of course, there are going to be late nights. It'd be remiss of me to say, oh, lol, just leave it 5 every single day. That's not going to happen, because there are clients in different jurisdictions, X, Y, and Z. Sometimes you do have to work late, and also we're paid pretty well, so we can't be ignorant to that fact.
yeah,
Um, so there is a level of expectation, but I think if you're just working late for the sake of it, to be recognized, to have somebody see you being sat there, there are other ways to get recognition within a firm rather than sit there. Get involved with the, I don't know, Wednesday night football, netball, squash, paddle,
yeah,
whatever it is. Join the run club, join the book club. There are so many other, invent a society at your firm. Be involved in the trainee committee, DE&I initiatives. Get involved in them. There are other ways to get people around the firm to know who you are. So if you're just sat there working for the sake of it, doing tasks that realistically they're not urgent, you're just putting a freaking bundle together, or you're doing a bit of Bibling, that's not urgent. It can wait. Go and do something else within the firm.
and if someone's listening to this and they're thinking, wow, I really want to do what Henry's doing, I want to be able to create content, I want to talk about my journey into the profession or particular challenges I'm facing, what would be your advice to someone who is perhaps a young lawyer or is just started and wants to create content and put it out there?
I would say, of course, I'd just say just do it. But then I'm saying that from a level of privilege in a sense that I am
Yeah.
qualified. So the biggest risk to me is the SRA, the Law Society, like, let's shut this boy down.
Hmm.
Whereas when you're trying to qualify, there are more hurdles to overcome. And the biggest loss or risk to you is that you never qualify. You get
Yeah.
struck off, which I think would be like, never say never, but I feel like that's quite an extreme thing, but who knows? Or
Mm.
the firms say we don't want you here anymore. So I would say post the content, just be mindful of what you're saying and how you say it. And I think as long as you're not saying anything negative, or you're not saying anything derogatory about the firm, and you're sharing your experiences, for example, how you found the SQE1, how you studied for it, And
Yeah.
as long as you're not, hi guys, buy my SQE1 course and I'll guarantee you a pass, like selling stuff like that, no.
Yeah.
Um, I think, but you can share your own experiences, and I think people get real value and comfort from that. There are so many amazing creators doing it right now. Maya from My Legal Career, Marb, who's just had a baby. All of these incredible creators, Justin from a DE and I perspective. Um,
Yeah.
Amelia sharing around sort of neurodiversity in the legal space. That's incredible. And I think we need more of that for people from all walks of life to have greater access and insight to what it's actually like. Because for a lot of people, they don't have people to speak to have these conversations, to find
Mm.
out what's it actually like in the law firm. And I don't know, if you're up in Liverpool, if you want to go to an open day down at Mishcons in London, that's a trek. When you're a trainee or a student, sorry, you don't necessarily have the time or the financial resource to yeet on down to Mishcon's office for an afternoon. So if I can just watch a creator talk about their experiences or whatever it may be, or Mishcons or Hogan's, whoever it may be, has their own TikTok channel, and you've got employee generated content on there, I want to watch that. And I think that not only creates greater access to the profession, but it's also just nice to watch.
That's so important. I think that last point you mentioned of not just creators, but also law firms having their own content, so that that provides another access rather than just marketing through their website or just open days, which not everyone may be able to attend. I guess can we talk a little bit about, from your perspective, what law firms can do more of to create more access and to kind of open up to their social media in terms of, and I guess that also then giving confidence to people that they can also create content.
I speak about Hogan's quite a lot because they're doing it really successfully
Mm.
on socials, is that they kind of use current trainees and they're getting that employee generated content to make it sort of relatable. It's not just two 60-year-old white old men partners sat there talking about how great the firm is when they've been there from trainee to partner.
Yeah.
Um, you actually get to hear real life stories and you're not reading it in a glossy brochure.
Mm.
You're actually getting to see and hear them. And I think that adds like a 3D dimension to it where you can actually really understand, experience, and feel like you're there um, in the room. And I think that adds such a value. If you take a look at most um, people from like Gen Z and Gen Alpha who are slowly entering the workforce, they are all on social media. They consume content, they consume news through the
Yeah.
social media platforms. That's where you're going to attract top talent. That's where you're going to be able to showcase to future talent. This is what our culture is like. Let them live the culture through the content that you're putting out there so they can get a feel for it.
And speaking of content, I also wanted to talk about your own venture with Creator Space and kind of encouraging more creators to enter the space and supporting them with other creators. So can you tell us a little bit about that business venture and sort of how that came to be?
Yeah, for sure. I love this space. It's such a bizarre space to be in.
Yeah.
And I think what's nice is that it was never my intention, so I get to like just experiencing it all like now. Interesting though, I don't think many people know this. My older sister, older, she's like 1 year older than me. Her full-time job is she is an online gamer. Um, like she trained at uni to do graphic design, but then just became an online gamer. So
Wow.
having like two siblings that are basically social creators uh,
Yeah.
has been really nice in a sense that we kind of live the experience together,
Hmm.
get to share it, be like, oh, dude, I think this brand campaign would be better suited to you, or do you have a contact here, or lol, look at this. So that's been really, really nice, and that's something that we've tried to replicate in the creator like world, is that creating content, particularly if it's your full-time job, can be quite lonely in a sense. It's just you, your camera, maybe you've got an
Yeah.
agent, maybe you've got a videographer, but you don't necessarily get to have colleagues in the same way. Um, you'll meet people at events that you're like, oh, you're so cool, but you never see each other again because you don't
Mm.
get to go to the same events in the future. So it's always intended to just it started with me and my two friends, Gabriel and Tanvi. We met at an event and we liked each other, so we got brunch. Um, and it just snowballed from that in terms of how can we bring creators together to actually share, chat about our experiences, and ultimately just like have like make friends.
I love that. And I really found that interesting about that idea of, as you said, it can be very isolating. Another fear that I guess a lot of people would have, particularly if, let's say, they're a couple of years into whatever profession they're in and thinking, okay, I also have a platform. Can I
Yeah,
potentially go into that full time or even sort of take a backseat from my actual job? And that idea of, parents or even they thinking there's not a lot of security in this. What happens a couple of years down the line if people just suddenly stop watching my content? Does that mean I don't generate any income or, I don't sort of have that, I guess, presence? What would be your sort of response to that on how you kind of ensure that you stay consistent and you kind of constantly get that engagement from the audience?
it's funny you mentioned the parent thing because I recall when I told my parents that I think I'm going to stop being a lawyer full time. And they're like, "What do you mean?" Why would you do that? And I think they take comfort in the fact that I will always be qualified and I can always go back,
Yeah.
and that I still technically do work as a lawyer, albeit part time. Uh,
Mhm.
but also, I think there's less of a concern for them given that my older sister's been doing this a lot longer and she's been fine.
Yeah.
Uh,
She's a pro.
yeah, exactly. So um, I think, but also it's you have to live your life for yourself, not your parents. As much as your parents want to support you, they are of a
Mm.
different generation. They don't see this as a job because they don't get it. But you see some of the money influencers make, and it puts those uh, six-figure NQ role salaries to shame.
Yeah.
And you just think, ooh, ooh, I know what I'd rather be doing. Um, yeah. So I do think that if you really want to do it, give it a go. Life is too short to not try. And as long as you're not putting yourself at, that said with an element of privilege, because I think as long as you're not putting yourself at risk, you are not potentially going to lose your flat, your house. Um, you've got appropriate means saved up should things go wrong. Um, why the hell not? Give it a go. If the opportunity is there, you'll regret not doing it. And in any event, the time is going to pass. So you may as well do it. And
Agreed.
um, if you don't do it, somebody else will. And I think in terms of staying relevant, do you know what? It's so funny. I say this every year since I've started doing this. I've been doing it for 3 years now. Is I think I'm a 31-year-old man. I've probably got a year left in me. No one cares. Said it at 30. Then another year passes, and you just get bigger opportunities, better opportunities, more people care, and you just adapt and tailor your content. And I think if
Hmm.
I like have a child in the next few years, my content will just adapt to that. Like I wouldn't showcase my child, but managing life as a working parent, as a working dad, dads involved with their children, how all of that stuff um, goes. I want to write a book. There are so many things that I would like to do, and I think it's just making sure that you roadmap out what your ambitions are, what your goals are, because I'm sure you've got goals and ambitions for the podcast and where you want to take it and what you want to do.
Mm.
Um, and it's just making sure that you stick to that, but you don't also close yourself off to other opportunities that you weren't expecting or planning to do, but could be one of the best things ever.
Yeah, I think also that you forget that as you grow, your audience is also growing up and also growing older with you. And
But
so, if you're getting to the age where you're thinking, okay, maybe I want to now have a partner or have a child, well, maybe they're thinking along the same lines, or you're thinking about a career change, perhaps they're thinking about that as well. And I think we forget that in the pursuit of wanting to stay relevant, you've got to stay the same. And that's definitely not true because your audience isn't doing the same thing, year on year. And I think that that's a comforting thought. And like you say, you can use that for other opportunities, like whether that's writing a book or starting another business or starting another venture. And I think that that's the really nice thing about all the opportunities that content creation sort of does bring along with it. We started off talking about you joining the legal profession, so I want to sort of end back on that and talk a little bit about what you do at Thrive Law. So can you tell us a little bit about sort of what sort of tasks you get involved with, and how you manage that alongside or everything else that you do?
I rely heavily on Notion.
Mm.
So the things app, and so if Notion wants to sponsor me,
Love Notion.
I'm available. Um, but no, do you know what? I think so for my role at, let's start with that. For my role at Thrive, I primarily deal with sort of commercial contracts, supporting businesses in terms of putting appropriate like data protection agreements together, privacy policies, and just kind of consultancy agreements, whatever it may be, SaaS agreements,
Mhm.
software as a service, is just supporting basically a business in all its commercial endeavors and ensuring that they've got appropriate legal frameworks in place to enable them to go off and do the things that they want to do, but also their um, risks are mitigated if they're contracting with, say, third parties um, or others, which is great because it means I still get to exercise that side of my brain, which is a lot different to
Yeah.
the social media side of things. But I
Yeah.
think the two complement each other so well because I'm operating a business, but then I'm also advising businesses. And
Mhm.
doing so, like I know a lot of the struggles that I've had as a
Yeah.
person operating a business. I can then share that, and you've kind of got that level of connection in trust on that front. Um, but then I am also mindful that I am acting in that capacity as lawyer me, not business creator me, and I want to just kind of keep the two separate to an extent. So I try not to delve into that side too much whilst I've got my lawyer hat on, because I am obviously still a professional and there are professional
Yeah.
responsibilities that I have to adhere to. Um, so that's fun. And then, yeah, in terms of just managing my time, I rely heavily on like Notion, as we mentioned, the Things app, and my calendar. And no, do you know what, actually? I, here's the thing. I didn't realize, I always thought they're rubbish, that they have no purpose, an iPad. Okay, I've never really owned one. And then late last year, Joe, I went and bought an iPad, the keyboard and
Yeah.
all of that. And game changer. I have never been more organized. That thing comes with me everywhere. I love
Yeah.
it.
Also happy for Apple to sponsor you
Yeah,
as well.
also fast. Um, I have my notes are all grouped into categories.
Yeah.
Everything is there. I recently got the pen. I'm taking notes.
Yeah.
Literally, I sound like a right
Yeah.
boomer. But honestly, I've never had an iPad before. Just my MacBook and my phone.
Yeah.
Game changer. Get an iPad. That's my top
I
tip.
love
Get an iPad.
I
Use your
love that.
student discount. Buy an iPad.
That's the takeaway from the episode. Buy an iPad for sure. And the one question I had when you were actually talking about having that lawyer hat on and the creator hat on, I'm not sure if you follow Ali Abdaal on YouTube, but
I hosted his book launch last January,
what?
and
Oh my
I haven't
God, that's
got
amazing.
his book. I met him. He is so cool.
I mean, I'm just such a fan of his videos. But I found what I found interesting was obviously he had that phase of, I guess, when he was sort of part time being a doctor, part time being a YouTuber, and then he sort of
Yeah,
fully quit the medical profession. And at the time, I remember him doing a video and talking about feeling like he'd put in all these years of work and now he'd sort of quit
yes.
that and where that was the right thing. Do you feel like there'll be a time when you potentially might kind of leave the job of a lawyer as a whole and fully go into content creation, or do you feel like the part time is what suits you best?
'Cause you're saying that I recall watching Ali's videos. I've watched him for years.
Yeah,
When I met him, I was like, I don't get starstruck very easily.
that's
I met him,
incredible.
I was like, dude, you're such a dude. I watched him for so long, and when he was like still a doctor, and he was doing all this like cool like unboxing and reviews and shit. I
Yeah,
was like,
yeah,
I
yeah,
love this stuff.
yeah.
And then for him to like, he's incredibly successful. Recently married,
Hmm.
baby on the way with Izzy,
Yeah,
who's also lovely. Um, I I don't know if I would ever quit. I feel like with Ali, his content is more focused around like productivity as a whole, and it's
mm,
not necessarily tied to his identity as a doctor.
right.
Um, Whereas I think I'm slightly different to the extent that I'm quite attached to the lawyer
Yeah.
identity,
Mm,
which I could just change my handle. It's not that deep. It's just messy. We're changing the
yeah.
handle. But I think there's a part of me that has, to the point Ali mentioned, and you just said, sorry, that you spend so many years training.
Yeah.
But I also feel like you're not letting it go forever because the training's not wasted because you still did the work. You still
Yeah.
practice, you still earned money through doing that. You are still a lawyer. I'll still be a lawyer. He'll still be a doctor. So never say never. I don't know if you have this, but I think it might be a lawyer thing. I'm very risk adverse to doing things, but I'm also
Yeah.
very impulsive at the same time. So I don't know. I have no plans to right now, Jodie, if you're watching this, I have no plans of yeah, imagine this is my resignation. This would be sick. Yeah, someone post.
Breaking news.
But yeah, no plans of any of that at the moment, but never say never.
Amazing. And on that cliffhanger, we are
That
going
was the
to,
word.
yeah. We always end the podcast with a rapid fire. So I have a final three questions for you. So question number one is, what is the best and worst advice you've ever received?
Ooh. Oh, best. Do you know what best is? I recall someone saying to me, I think it was my mum actually, and I was very young, and I remember her saying, I'll probably cry saying it, or loser, get a grip, is my mum saying something like, I don't think the world is sort of quite ready for somebody like you, but don't ever change. So I think
Hmm.
I wouldn't, don't change yourself this is what I'm saying to like people that are looking to enter the legal profession.
Yeah.
We all have a typical image in our head of what we think lawyers should be like. Don't change yourself to fit in. I've
Hmm.
had so much more success being like this, being my full self, than I ever had as a lawyer. And when I was a lawyer, I was very much told I was too sort of loud is the wrong word because I'm not a loud person, but just a bit like a bit much, like too exuberant, too much like
Yeah.
energy. Um, Whereas now I get to like channel all of that into speaking and content, and that's
Yeah.
kind of where it flourishes. And what would the worst advice be? I think the worst advice would be, I'd say probably get an overdraft as a student. That was a bad idea. Uh, yeah, in terms of like career professional, like negative advice, I've not really had bad advice because I feel like
Yeah.
I like to think that I've had questionable, but I surround myself with people that
Hmm.
kind of know like me quite well and know like, you obviously know what's best for you more than anybody
Yeah.
else, but people that kind of know the sort of vibe and what you're into. So I don't think anyone said anything like too crazy.
And on a slightly lighter note, the next question is, what does your ideal weekend consist of?
Uh, well, great question. I would say I don't watch much TV.
Mm.
I don't even have a Netflix subscription. Um, Not because I'm a cheapskate. Actually, that's a lie. Partly it is, and the reason it is because in our family we all paid for like a subscription each, and mine was Netflix. That's the one I paid for. But then
Yeah.
Netflix introduced a thing that you all had to be on the same Wi-Fi. We're not, and because I don't watch Netflix that much, I thought this was a waste of time and money. So I cancelled it. I also don't get that much time to just sit and play my PlayStation. So it would probably be like go to the gym, play my PlayStation, see my mates, see people, um, go for a hike, go for a bike ride, um, cook, and just vibe.
Just out of curiosity, have you ever beaten your sister while playing PlayStation?
No. Um, no, that's a lie. When we were younger, yes. And do you know the reason? When I was doing my AS levels, my parents got me whatever Xbox was out at the time for Christmas. I was
Yeah.
like sick. I was playing like Call of Duty online, having the best freaking time. And then I remember we did our mocks for AS level, and I didn't do bad, but I think my mocks were like C's, and my parents were like, "Nah, boy, you smash those GCSEs. C's are unacceptable. Like, no shade to anyone who's got C's. Um, but
Yeah.
my parents were like, A's or get in the bin. So my parents basically my sister then somehow, I don't know how, got my Xbox, and that's how she got, so I could focus on revision. And that's
Oh,
how she got into gaming. So I'm gonna say her career is down
was because of you.
down to my failure. But no,
I
when we were
love that.
younger, I probably was like better.
Mm,
But now, like she's so elite that like
you just,
I
yeah.
wouldn't I wouldn't even embarrass myself.
And the final question is, what are the three top travel destinations on your bucket list?
So it was Japan, but I went there at the end of last year, and
Mm.
I loved. So I now really want to do Canada. I've never been. I really want to go there. I would like to go to Hong Kong. Haven't been there. I'd also quite like to go to Hawaii. There's another one.
Mm.
No, Sac Hawaii, Brazil. Sac
Oh,
Hawaii. Like,
I love that. It's
yeah.
covered like so many different continents. Amazing. And on that note, Henry, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. It was so much fun to chat. Like we learned so much and laughed along the whole time. And we will say one more time to Jodie that no plans to
Yeah,
leave
we're not
Sligo
quitting
as of
Jodie.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah, she can rest assured. On that note, thank you so much for listening to this episode, and a massive shout out to Henry for coming on Commerce Meets Law. Despite such a busy schedule and obviously such an incredible and massive following, Henry took the time to come on this podcast, and that effort really, really doesn't go unnoticed. As I always say, I'm eternally grateful to the guests and the listeners of this podcast, all of you listening, because Commerce Meets Law would be nowhere without all of you. So a huge, huge thank you once again. If you enjoyed this episode, please do let me know by emailing commercemeetslaw@gmail.com or with a DM on Instagram at commercemeetslaw. And you can also reach out to us on our website, which will be linked down in the description. It's got the same name, commercemeetslaw.com, as a one-stop shop for the podcast, the YouTube channel, and also all of our social media platforms. For now, take care, goodbye, and I'll see you very soon on the next episode.